She's just here for the pictures, my daughter murmured, thinking I couldn't hear. But I heard every word, as clearly as I'd once heard her first cry in that hospital room 46 years ago. I was standing by the guest book table, adjusting a crooked candle, when she said it to one of the bridesmaids. They both laughed quietly, polite and distant. Like I was a hired hand who'd overstayed. It wasn't the first time that week I'd been made to feel like an afterthought, but it was the first time I let the sting reach bone. The wedding was 2 days away, and everything had been rehearsed to death. The flowers, the seating chart, the speeches. Except for me. I'd flown in early to help as they asked, brought my own dress, pressed and folded, booked my own hotel room. Oh, the house is just too full, Mom, with all the out-of-town guests. I hadn't minded. I never do. I've always been the woman who fills in the cracks no one else sees. It was Eleanor's wedding, my granddaughter, the girl I practically raised while her mother chased careers and divorces. I was the one who taught her to read, braided her hair for school, held her when the world was unkind. My gran is my best friend, she used to say, her tiny arms around my neck. And now? Now I was good for a seat in the third row and the occasional photo op. Mom, can you please not rearrange things? My daughter Miranda hissed as she walked past. The planners got a very specific vision. I let go of the candle and stepped back. The wedding planner, a girl young enough to be my great-niece, flitted past in heels too high for comfort, giving me a tight, apologetic smile. Mrs. Avery, thank you so much for being here. We're just finalizing the vendor schedule. Feel free to enjoy the venue. Enjoy the venue. I sat down in one of the white folding chairs and looked out at the rented garden, trimmed to manufactured perfection. The lemon trees were fake. I know real ones. Grew them once in a sun-soaked corner of our backyard back in Iowa. Before Miranda got her scholarships and left for the city and forgot that families are made of more than annual visits and wire transfers. You okay, Gran? Eleanor's voice pulled me back. She stood there in her dress rehearsal outfit, a simple cream suit, her hair swept up. She looked radiant, older, tired. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, offering a smile. She hesitated, her fingers tightening around her phone. Listen, tomorrow's gonna be a lot. Mom's a little stressed, but she means well. I nodded. She always means well. She just wants everything to go perfectly. Of course, Eleanor bit her lip. And I was thinking, maybe during the cake cutting, it's best if you just watch from your table. It's kind of a symbolic moment for the couple and the parents. I looked at her, my Eleanor, the child who once insisted I sit beside her for every birthday candle she ever blew out. Don't touch the wedding cake, she added quickly, almost like a joke, but not really. I smiled again, nodded. Of course. She kissed my cheek and walked away, already distracted by a text. And I sat there, watching her go, remembering the little girl who once brought me dandelions in a chipped mug and said, "You're the best part of my world." The wind picked up, rustling the fake lemon leaves. My hands folded in my lap, steady despite the ache in my knuckles. There's a kind of strength that comes when you've been underestimated your whole life. They had no idea who they were asking to stay silent. I didn't sleep that night. The bed was too soft, the room too cold. I'd brought my own blanket, the blue quilt Eleanor loved as a child. It still smelled faintly of lavender, though the corners had frayed and the stitching was tired. I held it close, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the passing traffic outside. They think I'm just a spectator now. Someone who folds napkins and smiles politely. I remember when Miranda first handed Eleanor to me, red-faced and squalling, wrapped in hospital linen. Miranda had been 23, exhausted, irritated, already halfway gone in her mind to the next deadline. "Can you take her for a bit?" she'd asked, and that bit turned into years. I changed her diapers, took her to preschool, sat through every winter pageant and spring talent show. When she had nightmares, she called for me. When her parents fought, she hid in my arms. I taught her how to bake cornbread, how to patch denim, how to say no when something didn't feel right. But some lessons don't stick. By morning, I'd decided not to say anything, not to argue or defend my place. If they didn't want me in the pictures, that was fine. I'd seen the real thing, Eleanor in overalls, covered in dirt and flour, chasing butterflies in the backyard. That's the wedding album no one else owns. The hotel served breakfast in the lounge. I took my tea by the window, watching guests arrive in pressed suits and pastel dresses. Everything had that over-polished feeling, like someone had wiped the life off it with a sterile cloth. "Mrs. Avery?" The voice startled me. A young man, thin, neat, too polite, stood nearby with a clipboard. "I'm Thomas, part of the wedding team. Just wanted to go over your seating for tomorrow." I looked at the paper he held out. "Row C, seat 7, he said. "Between the officiant's cousin and the groom's great-aunt. Beautiful view of the arch. Not next to Miranda, not next to Eleanor." "That's fine," I said. He smiled, relieved. "Wonderful. And you'll be taking the shuttle, correct?" "I have my own car." "Perfect. And, he hesitated. "Miranda mentioned you might not want to stay too late at the reception. We have a reserved car to take you back early, if you prefer." Of course she did. I smiled. "Tell her I'll decide when I'm ready." His face twitched, and then he nodded. "Absolutely. Of course." He left. I sipped my tea. Outside, the gardeners were fluffing the hedges again, as if nature itself needed to pass inspection. Later that afternoon, I drove to the old bakery near the park. It had changed owners, but the smell was the same. Sugar, cinnamon, yeast. I bought a small lemon tart. Eleanor's favorite when she was little. We used to split one on the bench outside, her legs swinging beneath her, her smile sticky with powdered sugar. I sat there for a while, tart untouched, watching the fountains splash. The same pigeons still strutted near the edge. The same elm tree stood at the corner, scarred and solid. When I got back to the hotel, there was a voicemail on my phone. "Hi, Mom, it's Miranda. Just checking in. I know things are a little chaotic, but we're all grateful you're here. Just keep things simple, okay? Eleanor's really sensitive right now. It's her big day. Let's not distract from that." Distract. That's what I am now. I deleted the message. That night, I ironed my dress again. Not that anyone would notice, but it mattered to me. I laid it on the bed beside my shoes, my pearls, my lipstick. Then I folded the blue quilt and placed it gently in my suitcase. Some things I would take home, some I wouldn't. They could seat me in the 3rd row near strangers. They could whisper about keeping things simple. But I knew who I was. I knew what I'd given. And I knew what they were about to take for granted one last time. The hotel lobby was buzzing by the time I came down the next morning. Men in suits adjusted their ties in the mirrors. Women clutched steaming paper cups, clicking their heels against the marble as they checked their phones. Every corner of the room seemed occupied by someone with a job to do, a role to play, a clipboard in hand. I stood to the side, near the fountain with the fake lilies, invisible again. Eleanor hadn't called. Not since the rehearsal, not since those careful words, "Don't touch the wedding cake." I kept trying to tell myself she'd been nervous, that her mother had gotten to her, whispered something sharp the way she always did when things got too human. Miranda never did like mess, or softness, or history. There was a shuttle waiting outside, white and shiny and far too large for the 4 elderly guests they'd packed into it. I climbed in without a word, clutching my small purse on my lap like a child on her first school bus. The venue sat on the edge of a vineyard, sunlight filtering through manicured vines, rows of white folding chairs lined up like soldiers. A wide wooden arch framed the hill behind it, draped with soft chiffon and flowers that probably cost more than my first car. Inside, it was colder. The air conditioning hummed through the banquet hall, already set for dinner. I'd arrived early. Too early, apparently, because the staff didn't seem to know what to do with me. "Mrs. Avery?" A woman in a headset appeared. "Oh, great. You're here. Just wait in the family lounge if you don't mind. They're running through final details." Family lounge. I almost laughed. It was a small side room with beige chairs and bottled water. No one else was there yet. A fruit plate sat untouched on the counter, slowly browning. I poured myself a cup of water and sat down, knees aching, the dress tight around my middle. After 20 minutes, Miranda swept in, dressed in slate gray satin, face sculpted with makeup, voice brisk. "Mom, thank God. Okay, listen. Everything's running on time. The photographer will need you briefly after the ceremony, just for a few family shots. Try to stay nearby, okay? Don't wander." "Of course." She paused, arms folded. "And I know Eleanor mentioned the cake." "Please don't take it personally. The caterers have a script. Timing is everything." "I understand." She looked surprised, like she'd expected resistance. "Good. I just want things to run smoothly. For Eleanor." "For Eleanor," I repeated. She glanced at the time. "I have to check on the seating tags. You'll be escorted to your row right before the ceremony starts. Row C, right?" "Yes." Another flash of surprise. I suppose she'd hoped I'd object, but I wasn't here to argue. I was here to see, to remember. Eventually, other guests filtered into the lounge. A cousin from Michigan I hadn't seen in 15 years. A woman introduced as the groom's aunt, who smiled too hard and said, "So you're Eleanor's grandmother? Lovely girl. You must be so proud." I nodded, smiled, drank another cup of water. Pride and shame taste the same sometimes. Dry, metallic, bitter at the back of the throat. When they finally called for us, an usher led me down a quiet hallway toward the garden. Music drifted faintly from the speakers, strings, soft and reverent. The aisle was already lined with guests. I was led to my seat, 3rd row, edge. Row C, seat 7. I sat, smoothed my dress, clasped my hands in my lap. From here, I could see the arch, the groom, the officiant. Eleanor would walk right past me, but not close enough to reach. Someone behind me whispered, "Is that the grandmother?" Another answered, "No idea. Might be the other side." The sun was warm, the sky too blue, the laughter too bright. I stared straight ahead, my face calm. I'd practiced this for years. Weddings, birthdays, Christmas dinners, always just off-center. Always just useful enough to keep around. When the music shifted and everyone stood, I caught my breath. Eleanor appeared. Not as the child I remembered, but a woman in ivory lace, her face soft, her eyes searching. She took her first steps down the aisle on her father's arm, and as she passed my row, Her gaze flicked, just once, in my direction. A flicker of recognition, of guilt, or something else. I nodded, she looked away, and kept walking. The ceremony lasted 18 minutes. Not that anyone was counting, but I was. I sat still through every second, hands folded, back straight. The vows were modern, the kind with jokes and just enough sentiment to draw polite laughter. The groom cried a little. Eleanor smiled, but not with her eyes. When they kissed and the crowd clapped, I clapped too. Quietly, as one might at a concert they didn't ask to attend. Then came the sorting. The planner moved through the guests like a sheepdog, pointing, nodding, correcting. Rows were dismissed in order. I waited for someone to come get me. No one did. Eventually I stood, smoothing my dress, and followed the flow toward the cocktail tent. People passed me with practiced smiles. I caught snatches of conversation about the view, the signature drinks, the fabulous floral arrangements. No one mentioned the bride's grandmother. Near the bar, I saw Miranda. She was laughing with a woman in a coral dress. Her laugh was wide, open-mouthed, and for a moment, she looked like the girl I used to know. Then she spotted me. "Oh, Mom, there you are." I stepped closer. Beautiful ceremony. "Yes, it was," she said, already scanning the crowd again. "Can you do me a favor and check on the guest book? Some of the pens ran out and the planner's overwhelmed. It's just by the entrance." Of course, a task. A little corner job to keep me occupied. "I'll see to it," I said. "Thanks. You're a lifesaver." She turned back to her friend before I'd even moved. I walked to the entrance and found the table. A few pens, mostly working. The guest book had neat little messages. Some funny, some sweet. A few illegible scrawls from children. I stood there a long time, straightening the pages, watching the guests flow in. Not one of them looked in my direction. It was as if I'd become part of the decor, a well-dressed woman stationed near the table to smile and nod. Eventually, someone tapped me on the shoulder. It was a teenage boy I vaguely recognized from rehearsal. "Are you like the grandma?" he asked. "I am." "Cool," he said, then offered his phone. "Can you take a photo of me and my mom? For Instagram." I took the phone, clicked, handed it back. "Thanks," he said, and disappeared. Not long after, a waiter passed with hors d'oeuvres. I reached for one, and he hesitated. Looked at my name tag. "Family," it said. Then he smiled stiffly and let me take one. Crab cake, too cold. The band started playing soft jazz. Somewhere, the wedding party had gone off for formal pictures. I wasn't invited. No one said I couldn't come, but no one looked for me either. I wandered past the gift table, where 3 envelopes were tucked into a silver box. Mine was already in there, dropped in early, before they could count. A check, neatly folded. Not a fortune, but more than they expected. Enough for a honeymoon flight or a new couch. A woman near me said, "The bride's grandmother helped raise her, you know." Another replied, "Oh, really? I thought she was from the father's side." "No, that's the mother's mother. She lives in Iowa or something." I turned away. The reception hall opened at 6. People flowed in, chattering and rearranging themselves like birds before a storm. I found my table, table 12, near the far end, past the DJ booth, half hidden behind a decorative tree. The name card read, "Mrs. Avery, family." The table wasn't full. A couple of elderly guests, a young man with headphones, and a woman who smiled too much. The rest were strangers. I sat, smiled, waited. Someone eventually asked, "So, How do you know the bride? I'm her grandmother. Oh. A pause. Well, she looked beautiful, didn't she? She always does. The salad came late. The wine was too dry. The music was too loud. No one came to say hello. When the wedding party finally entered, Eleanor and her new husband leading the way, everyone stood and clapped. They circled the room, stopping at each table, taking photos, sharing hugs. They skipped mine. Not obviously, not with malice, just skipped it. They passed right by. Eleanor's eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. She didn't stop, didn't wave. And I realized then that the only person in that entire room who saw me was me. Dinner had barely started when the speeches began. First, the groom's father, who spoke with polished charm about legacy and hard work. Then the bride's college friend, an amusing, if slightly long-winded account of shared dorm disasters. There were polite chuckles, applause, a few wiped eyes. I picked at my food, chicken, dry, potatoes, underdone. My appetite had long since left the room. I wasn't expecting a speech slot, but I did think, perhaps, someone might raise a glass and nod my way. A small moment. Just a flicker. But there was none. Between courses, I excused myself and stepped outside. The hallway was quiet, dimly lit. I found a bench near the restrooms and sat down, adjusting my shoes. They pinched in the toes, old bones and new leather, never friends. Then I heard her voice. Gran? I looked up. Eleanor stood there in her gown, bouquet in hand, eyes tired under all the makeup. I was looking for you, she said, a little breathless. Were you? She winced slightly. I meant to come by your table, Everything moved so fast. I noticed, I said gently. She sat beside me, careful not to wrinkle the dress. Her perfume was soft, vanilla with something bitter beneath it. I'm sorry, she said after a long pause. For earlier, for the way things have felt. You don't have to apologize for being a bride, Eleanor. She turned to me. No, but maybe I do need to apologize for being someone else's daughter. That sat between us for a moment, unexpected, and heavier than it sounded. She wanted everything perfect, she continued. And perfect meant managed, controlled. That includes people. I've known your mother a long time. Eleanor laughed, but without amusement. Yeah, I guess you have. Silence again. I don't want you to feel pushed out, she said finally. You matter. You always have. I looked at her. At this grown woman with my eyes and her father's chin. At the child who once built forts from sofa cushions and swore she'd live with me forever. You told me not to touch the wedding cake, I said quietly. She blushed. That wasn't me. That was Mom talking through me. I know whose mouth it came from. She looked away. I just wanted today to go smoothly. I nodded. It's gone smoothly, but not well. I said nothing. She reached for my hand, fingers light, unsure. Gran, I know it's too late to fix how things have gone, but maybe not too late to fix after. That small hand, once sticky with frosting, now adorned with a new ring. I squeezed it. I'm here, I said. Still. She looked like she might cry, but the hallway door swung open and someone called her name. I have to go, she said, standing. I nodded. Go on. She hesitated, then bent and kissed my cheek. I'll see you before cake. When she disappeared down the hall, I sat there a while longer, listening to the music filter through the walls. A slow song. Maybe their first dance. Maybe not. I didn't rush back. By the time I returned to my table, the second course had been cleared. Dessert menus passed around. Champagne poured. Eleanor was back at the main table, radiant and distracted, her hand tucked in her husband's. I caught her glance once. She smiled. A little real this time. Not much, but enough to notice. I sipped my champagne and waited, because soon would come the moment, the cake, and they'd made it clear I wasn't meant to touch it. But no one had asked what I was planning to do. I woke before dawn, not because of nerves, not even because of the unfamiliar bed or the two stiff pillows. It was just how my body worked now. After 70 years, it didn't need much rest, just quiet. And quiet was in short supply in a hotel packed with people running on caffeine and last-minute panic. The room was dim, curtains drawn. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while, feet flat on the carpet, hands resting in my lap. It was a posture I remembered from childhood. Sunday mornings before church, waiting to be told what to do, how to move, where to be. Old habits don't die, they just soften at the edges. I ran a brush through my hair. The gray had taken over years ago, but I never dyed it. Not out of pride, just principle. I earned every strand. At the small table by the window, I brewed the cheap in-room coffee. It tasted like cardboard and burnt dust, but it was warm. I cupped it between both palms and watched the sun stretch up over the trees. Orange and pale, a wedding day kind of sky. I'd packed the dress carefully, flat between tissue paper and patience. Navy blue, modest neckline, 3/4 sleeves. Not the kind of dress that drew attention, but one that asked, quietly, to be noticed. I laid it across the bed, unzipped the garment bag, smoothed the lines with my hand. Next to it, I placed my shoes. Low heel, polished. My lipstick, a soft coral, not too bright. My pearls, faintly yellowed, but still elegant. And beside them, folded with care, a note from Eleanor I'd kept for years. She'd written it when she was 11. A school project, I think. It had ended up in my coat pocket somehow and stayed there until I found it years later while cleaning. If I ever get married, I want Gran to walk me down the aisle, because she's the one who made me believe in love. Of course, she hadn't asked me to walk her down the aisle, but that's not what the note meant. It meant that once I'd been central, not a figure in the third row, not a helper at the guest book table, not an afterthought. I tucked the note into my clutch. The mirror showed a woman in a dress that fit better than expected, hair pinned back, lips touched with color. My hands trembled slightly when I fastened the necklace, but not from nerves, from age, from time, from everything I'd never said aloud. George would have laughed seeing me like this. He always said I looked best in blue. He would have driven me himself, parked too close to the entrance, walked me in with pride and no patience for place cards. I missed him in a way that didn't ache anymore, just hovered, like breath on a mirror. There, but not quite visible. At 10:00, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a man from the venue. Just confirming your transport preferences, ma'am. Shuttle or personal vehicle? I'll drive myself. Understood. Parking is in Lot B. A volunteer will guide you to the garden entrance. I thanked him and hung up. Outside, the hall buzzed. Room doors opening, heels clicking, zippers zipping, laughter too bright, voices too loud. The wedding was starting to happen. The momentum was building. I wasn't nervous, but I felt suspended. Like a coat hung on a door you're not supposed to open. Present, but barely. I checked the time. Noon. The ceremony was scheduled for 3. That left me 3 hours. I considered calling Eleanor, just to say hello, but I didn't. I didn't want to interrupt whatever world she was in now. That world didn't have much room for history, for softness, for women like me who carried stories instead of handbags. Instead, I sat at the desk and wrote a short note, just in case. It said, "My darling girl, whatever happens today, whatever's remembered or forgotten, I want you to know I showed up for you, always, even when I wasn't asked, even when it hurt. Love, Gran." I folded it, placed it next to the old note in my clutch, and zipped it closed. Then I stood, gathered my things, and left for the wedding. The parking lot was already half full when I arrived. I parked my old Buick near the edge, under a tree. The other cars were polished black, gleaming silver, rented, no doubt, or borrowed for the occasion. I didn't mind the contrast. My car had history, more miles behind it than some of those guests had in their marriages. The air smelled like roses and heat. I stepped out slowly, careful with the heels, clutch tucked under one arm. My dress caught the light just right. I'd worn it for funerals, for church, once to George's retirement dinner. It had always carried me quietly. The walk to the entrance was lined with petals, white and soft underfoot. Volunteers stood in coordinated outfits, nodding politely. One offered to escort me to my seat. "Table 12, I said. He checked his clipboard. "Yes, ma'am. Right this way." The garden was blooming, manicured within an inch of its life. Guests already filled the space, laughter bouncing across linen-draped tables, champagne glasses catching sun. I moved through it all like a ghost. At my table, the same quiet strangers smiled politely. I sat, adjusted my clutch in my lap, and took in the room. Miranda stood near the head table, directing someone with a clipboard. The groom was talking with his groomsman, relaxed. Eleanor hadn't appeared yet. Someone was already playing piano, too soft to recognize the song. I watched as the photographer floated from table to table, coaxing smiles, rearranging arms. He never came near ours. The planner passed by and paused when she saw me. "Oh, Mrs. Avery, I didn't see you come in." "I came in quietly." She smiled, professional and empty. "Everything okay? Need anything?" "No, thank you." She nodded. "Lovely. We'll be starting the formal announcement soon." She left. Across the room, I saw Eleanor finally appear. She stood at the far end, bouquet in hand, veil tucked gently over one shoulder. Not quite glowing. More reserved. Her husband took her hand. They said something quietly and she smiled, but it faded too fast to be real. I didn't wave. I didn't call her name. I just looked. There she was, my girl. The one who once danced on the porch barefoot, who cried when her school shoes pinched, who once believed the moon followed us home just to keep her company. She didn't see me, or maybe she did, and pretended not to. They made their entrance as a couple a few minutes later, the MC announcing their names with dramatic flair. Everyone clapped. They moved between tables, greeting guests, stopping for kisses on cheeks, snapshots, short toasts. When they reached table 11, I straightened. Their next stop would be mine. But it wasn't. They turned, pivoted, walked directly toward the cake. A small cheer rose from the crowd. Someone tapped a glass with a fork. A chant began, "Cut the cake! Cut the cake!" I sat very still. Eleanor lifted the knife, her husband's hand over hers. Cameras flashed. The DJ said something I couldn't hear. They posed, cut, laughed, and fed each other the first piece. I looked down at my lap. So that was that. No nod, no glance, no gesture toward the woman who'd once baked every birthday cake of her childhood. "Don't touch the wedding cake," she'd said. I hadn't. I hadn't touched anything. But as the music swelled and applause filled the room, I realized something simple and sudden. They may have taken me off the stage, but they forgot I built the floor. I found the restroom by following the hallway past the coat check and the oversized mirror where guests stopped to fix their makeup. I didn't stop. I didn't need to see myself right then. Inside, the lights were too bright. Everything gleamed unnaturally. Tiles, faucets, even the paper towel dispenser. A woman in a red dress was adjusting her earrings at the far sink. She looked at me briefly, offered a polite smile, and went back to her reflection. I entered a stall, not because I needed to. I just wanted a place to sit with a door between me and the rest of the world. My knees ached. My back was tight. But that wasn't why I sat so long. It was the heaviness, the kind that starts in the chest and spreads outward, into the bones, into the fingers. A dull, dragging weight that comes from being reminded again that presence doesn't equal importance, that a lifetime of showing up can be rewritten in a weekend. When I emerged, the woman in red was gone. The sink still ran a little, dripping in uneven rhythm. I washed my hands slowly, dried them, reapplied my lipstick. It didn't matter what I looked like, but I did it anyway. When I stepped back into the hallway, Miranda was standing there. She wasn't waiting for me. She was looking at her phone, half turned toward the lobby. But when she saw me, her shoulders stiffened. The daughter in her always gave herself away too quickly. "Oh, there you are," she said. "I was just going to send someone to look for you." I needed a moment. She nodded, lips tight. "The cake's been done. You missed it." I didn't miss it. She tilted her head. "Look, Mom, I know today has been a lot, but can we not do this right now? I'm not doing anything. I just mean, don't make things uncomfortable." I've said nothing. "That's the problem," she said too fast. "You sit there with that look, like we've all failed some secret test. It's not fair." I folded my hands calmly in front of me. "Do you think it's fair, Miranda, that I've been treated like a stranger at my own granddaughter's wedding?" She blinked. "That's not true. You're here, aren't you?" "I'm here, in body." A beat passed, her jaw tensed. "It's Eleanor's day. She wanted things simple. She told me not to touch the wedding cake. She didn't mean it like that." I believe she did. Miranda looked around the hall, checking to see if anyone was listening. Then she lowered her voice. "You make people uncomfortable when you linger too much. You ask questions that aren't helpful. You always want to be involved in things that aren't yours." I took that in like a cold wind. "All these years," I said slowly, "I thought being a mother meant staying close, being available, helping. It did, when I needed it. And now?" She didn't answer. "You used to call me in the middle of the night," I said. "You used to say you didn't know what you were doing, that I was the only one who understood. Do you remember that?" "That was a long time ago." "No, Miranda. It wasn't. Not for me." She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her expression flickered. Not regret, not even anger, just fatigue. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "but things change." I nodded. "Yes." "They do." There was a silence between us, the kind that builds not from absence, but from too much left unsaid. "I'll go back to my table," I said. "You don't need to send anyone next time. If I'm missing, it's on purpose." She didn't stop me, didn't walk with me. just stood there, holding her phone like it might save her. When I returned to table 12, the woman who smiled too much was gone. The young man with headphones was scrolling his phone. The older couple had taken their cake to go. I sat down. The slice of cake I hadn't been offered was already melting at the center of the table, untouched. The band had shifted into what I assumed they called the dance portion of the evening. It began with the usual suspects. At Last, Can't Help Falling in Love, something vaguely Motown, and a few brave couples took to the floor. Younger guests first, then the bolder elders. Laughter, clapping, shoes slipping a little on the polished wood. I remained seated. The music was too loud for conversation, too slow for distraction, and not sentimental enough to stir anything real. Just background for people who wanted to feel like they were feeling something. Eleanor and her husband, his name was Ryan, I now remembered, danced alone for a while. A spotlight followed them, her veil gone, her hair a little looser. They looked like the kind of couple you see in catalogs for expensive silverware. Pleasant, composed, edited. They didn't speak much as they moved. Behind them, a slideshow played on a screen. Childhood photos, high school portraits, college memories. I saw Eleanor at 5 with a painted face, Eleanor at 10 holding a dog, Eleanor at 16 posing with friends by a lake. I wasn't in a single picture. Not one. Not even the ones I'd taken myself once. Photos I'd printed, framed, mailed to her mother for safekeeping. They hadn't made the cut. It wasn't just omission, it was erasure. And that was something else entirely. A hand tapped my shoulder. I turned, surprised to see Eleanor's new husband, Ryan, standing behind me. "Hi, Mrs. Avery," he said, smiling too hard. "Mind if I sit?" I gestured to the empty chair next to me. "It's yours." He sat, exhaled. "Big day, huh?" "Seems so." He nodded, glanced toward the dance floor. "Eleanor said I should come check on you. She's been worried." "She didn't look it." He hesitated, then gave a sheepish smile. "Okay, fair. But I think she just doesn't know how to talk to you right now. I wasn't aware we needed new instructions." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I know this probably feels off. The seating, the planning. Miranda kinda took over. She does that. I don't think Eleanor meant to shut you out. She talks about you a lot, really." I studied his face. He was sincere, nervous, caught in something deeper than he realized. "She used to call me every Saturday morning," I said. "For years. Told me about boys, homework, fears she didn't tell her parents. Then one day she stopped." He didn't answer. "That's not your fault," I added, "but I want you to know what you're marrying into." He laughed softly, surprised. "Thanks, I think." We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, people swayed to music. The photographer captured hugs and twirls. The bartender poured another round. "Do you love her?" I asked suddenly. Ryan blinked. "Of course I do. She's difficult sometimes. So is her mother. I've noticed." "Then good luck," I said. "You'll need it." He looked at me, and then, unexpectedly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "She told me to give you this. I don't know what it is." He handed it to me and stood. "I should get back before someone notices I'm gone." I held the envelope. Didn't open it. Not right away. He rejoined the dance floor. Eleanor leaned into him, whispering something. He nodded. She didn't look at me. I placed the envelope in my lap. The band transitioned into something livelier now. More clapping, laughter. The night was peaking. Soon the sparklers would come out. The last song, The send-off. The woman who smiled too much returned to the table, holding a glass of rosé. She sat beside me and said, "Do you think they'll make it?" I looked at her. "Eleanor and Ryan," she added, as if I'd forgotten. "I don't know," I said. "But you hope so, right?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't hope, but because I wasn't sure whose hope mattered anymore. I didn't open the envelope until I got back to my hotel room. Not because I was afraid of what it said, but because I needed silence around me when I read it. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for performance. I laid it gently on the desk and sat down, slipping off my shoes first. My feet pulsed, my knees stiff. The night had pressed itself into my body in that slow, invisible way disappointment always does. The envelope had no name on the front. Inside, one small folded note. My name at the top. Gran. I opened it, hands steady. I wanted to write this before the day got away from me. I know it's been awkward, and maybe even hurtful. I didn't fight hard enough for you to be included in everything the way you should have been. I was tired, and when I get tired, I disappear into what's easy. Mom is easy. You've never been, but you've always been constant. I love you. Please don't think I've forgotten that. Eleanor. I read it twice. It was real, not long, not flowery, not nearly enough, but not nothing. It wasn't the kind of letter that forgives or repairs, but it paused something inside me that had been falling for hours. Like a branch catching a dropped glass before it shattered fully. I folded the note and placed it with the others in my clutch. The old one from her childhood. The message I'd written this morning. They sat together now, like layers of a history no one else remembered. I stood, undressed slowly, hung the dress neatly in the closet, smoothing the fabric with both hands. I was about to reach for my nightgown when I caught my reflection in the mirror. The face looking back wasn't tired. It wasn't small. It wasn't forgettable. It looked like someone who had a decision to make. The wedding wasn't over. Not yet. I checked the time, 9:47 p.m. There'd be at least another hour of dancing, toasts, the sparkler send-off. Maybe longer. People were drunk now, warm, loose. No one was counting minutes, but I was. I reapplied my lipstick, put on the pearls again, slipped into the shoes, ignoring the pinch, and then I reached into the closet and pulled out the small white gift bag I'd brought from home. It hadn't made its way to the gift table. I'd kept it, unsure if I'd feel right leaving it behind. Inside was a small box of sugar cookies. Homemade, decorated in white and blue icing. Eleanor's favorite since she was 5. I'd made them 2 nights ago in my own kitchen, hands stiff, eyes damp with something I didn't have a name for. I'd baked them knowing no one asked me to, knowing they might never be eaten, knowing this was, in the quietest of ways, a form of saying goodbye to something I wasn't sure was still mine. I placed the box gently in the gift bag again, tied the ribbon, picked up my clutch, and walked back out the door. The night air was warm, the moon was full. I drove slowly, carefully, back to the vineyard. I didn't use the main parking lot. I knew that place by now. Knew the rhythms, the corners. I parked near the staff entrance, far from the lights. Took a path through the side garden, quiet, hidden. The reception hall still hummed. Music, chatter, the flash of cameras through windows. From here, it looked like a celebration, but I knew better. I stood in the shadow of a lemon tree listening. Then I moved forward. I wasn't going to disappear tonight. Not for anyone. The reception hall looked different at night, not just because of the lighting, though the candles flickered warmer now and the chandeliers glowed like stars dimmed just for mood. No, it was the air. Looser, a little blurred at the edges. The kind of atmosphere that made people forget themselves in small ways. I slipped in through a side door, unnoticed. No one guards the edges of a party. They only care about the center. The music had shifted again. Something louder now, faster, designed to pull people toward the floor. I saw Eleanor twirling with someone's cousin. Miranda talking with a man I didn't recognize. Ryan raising a glass to a small group of men in matching ties. No one saw me. And for once, I was glad. Because I didn't want to be watched when I did what I came to do. I walked quietly past the rows of tables. The gift table had filled up. Brightly wrapped boxes, sleek envelopes, ribboned wine bottles. My small bag looked almost embarrassed sitting among them, but it was still there. Near the far end of the room, against the wall where the lights were softest, stood the cake. 3 tiers, white fondant, gold detail. Fresh flowers on top, white peonies, I think. It was beautiful, professionally perfect, and untouched, except for the missing top corner where Eleanor and Ryan had cut the first slice earlier. A silver cake knife rested beside it, cleaned and laid flat. Waiting. No servers hovered now, no planner, no photographers, just the cake and me. I approached slowly. The sugar smell reminded me of birthday mornings, tiny fingers reaching for frosting before breakfast. My kitchen warm with the oven's breath. Eleanor sitting cross-legged on the counter, licking the spoon. Gran, I love this part the most. I reached for the knife. Held it. Its handle was heavier than it looked. I cut a slice. Not too large, not messy. Just a neat, careful triangle from the base layer. There was no dramatic gasp, no sudden silence, because no one noticed. The room continued spinning in its own music and laughter. I placed the slice gently on a small white plate and turned. Eleanor stood 10 feet away, not startled, not angry, just watching. We looked at each other across the distance. She didn't move. I walked toward her, cake in hand. Guests swirled between us, oblivious. A waiter brushed past. Someone bumped my shoulder lightly, said, "Sorry," kept walking. And still, I reached her. She didn't speak, didn't look confused. She just held my gaze. And then, without a word, I held out the plate. Not to her, to Ryan. He'd stepped up beside her, his face uncertain. He looked at Eleanor, then at me, then took the plate. "Thank you," he said quietly. I nodded once. Eleanor's eyes never left mine. For a moment I thought she might cry, but she didn't. She placed her hand gently on his arm, then turned back toward the crowd, guiding him toward the head table. I stood alone again, but this time, it felt different. I hadn't been dismissed. I'd chosen to move. I looked at the remaining cake. Still pristine. Still posed for admiration. I reached for another plate. I cut another slice. Not out of defiance. Not to prove anything. Just because someone needed to, and I'd never been the type to leave things half done. A woman in blue passed by, glass in hand. She glanced at the cake, at me, then smiled and said, "Oh, thank God, someone finally started serving." She took the second plate from my hands without hesitation. "Beautiful cake," she added, and walked off. That was all it took. A minute later, someone else approached, a teenage boy in a wrinkled dress shirt holding a fork. "Are we allowed to take one now?" "Yes," I said. He grinned and waited as I handed him a piece. Then came a man with a toddler on his hip, then 2 older women, then a pair of young girls giggling, icing already on their fingers. I stayed by the table, serving one slice after another, the rhythm familiar, like cutting pie on Christmas morning, or birthday cake for neighborhood kids in a kitchen that never stayed quiet long. No fanfare, no titles, just hands, plate, knife, cake, smile, repeat. Eleanor didn't return, but she didn't stop me either. At one point, Miranda appeared on the far side of the room. She was speaking to a planner, gesturing toward the cake. Then she saw me. We locked eyes across the room. She didn't come closer. Just looked. Then turned away. I kept cutting. Someone brought me a fresh stack of plates. Another offered a refill on napkins. The music continued behind me, the room still spinning with dancing, laughter, the clink of glasses. No spotlight found me. No toast was raised. And still, guests kept coming. I'd served half the base tier by the time Ryan approached again. Alone this time. He didn't say anything at first. Just picked up a plate and took a slice from my hands. He paused before walking off. "Is this lemon?" "Yes." "Her favorite?" "Since she was 5. He smiled. She didn't even know what flavor it was. She didn't need to. He nodded, then said, "You made this better. Tonight." Then walked away. I stood still for a moment, not because of what he said, but because I believed him. I believed that even without the speeches, the pictures, the thank yous, I had shifted something small, but real. I looked down at the remaining tears, still elegant, still whole. I wiped the knife on a napkin and set it down. Then I stepped back. Guests still moved around me, laughing, chewing, dabbing frosting from corners of mouths. No one asked who I was anymore. They didn't need to. I had taken my place, not by invitation, but by knowing I belonged. Not in their version of the night, but in its heartbeat. And I didn't need more than that. I didn't sit down again. Not at table 12, not near the bar, not by the wall where the coat hooks sagged under forgotten jackets. My feet ached, but I stayed standing. Still, quiet, present. People began to notice. Not all at once. Not with any kind of announcement. Just little things. A glance, a nod, a stranger whispering something to someone else, then looking my way. I wasn't doing anything. I was just the woman who'd cut the wedding cake. But in a room full of noise and choreography, that small act, mine, plain and unglamorous, seemed to echo louder than the speeches. A middle-aged woman I didn't recognize passed me with a plate and said, "That was lovely, what you did." She didn't wait for an answer. Then a young man in suspenders offered, "You saved the moment." Saved it from what? I wasn't sure, but I didn't correct him. Across the hall, I saw the planner again, headset still perched like a crown, clipboard clutched against her chest. She was speaking with a waiter, her voice clipped, eyebrows high. Then she looked over, saw me by the cake table, and her mouth pressed into a straight line. She didn't approach. Miranda was gone. Eleanor, too. The music softened. A slow song returned, something older, Sinatra, maybe. Couples moved like liquid, heads resting on shoulders, dresses brushing shoes. I watched, not as a bystander, but as someone who'd once been part of such a dance. George and I had danced at our daughter's wedding. One song. Moon River. He held me like the world was small, and we had all the time left in it. We didn't, of course, but we didn't know that yet. A new voice broke through. "Mrs. Avery." I turned. It was the MC, tall, nervous, holding a cordless microphone like it might explode. He cleared his throat. Would you like to say a few words before the couple's final dance?" I looked at him, then at the room. People were watching now, waiting. I shook my head. No, I said. His shoulders fell slightly. Sure, okay, just thought I'd ask. He turned to leave. But thank you, I added. He paused, gave a small nod, then walked away. I didn't need to speak. Not with a microphone. I'd already said what mattered. With a plate, with a slice of lemon cake, with the way I stayed. Near the end of the night, Eleanor came to me. Not with ceremony, not with apology, just with her shoes off, veil gone, and mascara slightly smudged. She stood beside me, breathing quiet. Everyone says the cake was their favorite part, she said. I didn't answer. She held something in her hand, a folded napkin, pressed flat. I kept one, she said, offering it. On it, the faint imprint of the icing, a lemon curl dried at the edge. I took it. Gran, she said, I'm sorry. Still, I said nothing, because silence isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's the only way to let a moment land. Then, softly, I know who taught me to do the right thing, even when it's late. She looked down. You were the only person who didn't ask me for anything today. That's not true, I said. She looked up. I asked you not to forget me, I said. She swallowed. I didn't. I nodded. I believe you. She stepped closer. Her arms were trembling, but she hugged me anyway. It was quick, a little clumsy, but real. And when she pulled back, I saw the child again, not in her face, but in the way she reached for my hand without looking down. The hall began to thin out just after midnight. One by one, the tables emptied. Some guests left with heels in hand, jackets slung over shoulders, voices hushed now by fatigue. Others lingered by the exit, hugging, laughing too loudly, already talking about breakfast plans and flights. The dance floor was nearly empty. Someone had spilled wine near the DJ booth. The lights had softened to near dark. A waiter collected empty glasses with the quiet focus of someone who'd done this too many times before. I stayed. Not because I had anything left to see, but because I wasn't ready to go. The cake table had been cleared, only a few crumbs left on the white cloth. My clutch rested beside a stack of plates. The note from Eleanor still folded inside. So was the one she wrote at 11, and the one I'd written that morning, folded but not given. I could have left them behind, but I wouldn't. Eleanor passed by once more, this time holding Ryan's hand. She paused briefly. Still here? She asked. Yes. She smiled. You always were. And then she was gone, walking out with him through the double doors, into the dark where sparklers had long since burned out. I turned back to the room. Miranda was near the far wall, speaking with the planner. Her makeup was smudged now, her shoes low and sensible. She hadn't looked at me since earlier, and I hadn't needed her to. Because that's the thing no one warns you about motherhood. You think the debt of your giving will be remembered, but it won't. Not in speeches, not in seating charts, not even in family slideshows. It's remembered, if at all, in the way your absence makes things fall apart. Quietly, invisibly. And I wasn't ready to vanish just yet. I walked slowly to the gift table, picked up the small white bag I'd brought. The box of cookies was half empty. Someone had opened it, tried one, maybe two. The top was folded shut again, gently, respectfully. That was enough for me. I held it in one hand, my clutch in the other, and looked around once more. The staff began sweeping. Someone unplugged the coffee machine. The DJ packed his cables. Chairs squeaked as they were stacked. And still, I stayed for a few more minutes, just to feel the shape of the room after everyone else had stopped noticing it. It's strange how something so carefully planned, so scripted, so staged, can end in such silence. No music now, just the hum of cleanup, the rustle of linens, the quiet closing of one chapter. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. No one asked me to. Instead, I walked out the side door, the one I'd entered through hours earlier. The garden was empty. The moon hung low and pale. My car waited under the same tree. I opened the door, sat down, and breathed. Not deeply, not dramatically, just like someone who had made it through something unspoken. Before I turned the key, I looked at the box in my lap. Inside, 2 cookies remained. I left them there. Some things don't need to be finished. They just need to be offered. The drive back to my house took just under 4 hours. I didn't listen to music, didn't turn on the radio. The road didn't ask for company. It asked only for stillness, and I had plenty of that to offer. Somewhere around the 2nd hour, the sky began to lighten. Just a little. Enough to remind me that the world doesn't pause for weddings, or families, or quiet heartbreaks. It keeps moving, and I moved with it. When I pulled into my driveway, the porch light was still on. I'd left it that way, though no one was waiting for me. Just habit, or hope. The air smelled like the town I actually lived in. Damp soil, a neighbor's laundry, the faint sweetness of the rose bush I'd planted the year George died. Inside, the house greeted me like it always had. Without questions. Without expectations. The quilt lay folded over the back of the couch. I didn't unpack right away. I didn't take off my shoes. I just stood in the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it slowly. The light through the window hit the table just right, and for a moment, I imagined Eleanor sitting there again, swinging her legs, asking for another cookie. "Gran, do I have to be nice if I don't want to?" "No," I'd told her. "You have to be kind. There's a difference." She didn't understand then. I don't know if she understands now, but I do. Kindness isn't performance. It isn't politeness, or posing for pictures, or letting someone sit near you while pretending they're not there. It's smaller than that. Quieter. Harder. Kindness is handing someone a plate even when they've forgotten your name. Kindness is staying until the very end, even when no one notices. Kindness is choosing not to vanish just because someone else thinks you should. Later that morning, I unpacked, hung up the dress, washed the clutch lining where a peppermint had melted. I laid the 3 notes side by side on the table, the one Eleanor wrote as a child, the one from her wedding day, and the one I never gave. I thought about burning mine, or mailing it, or slipping it between the pages of an old cookbook she might someday inherit. But in the end, I just folded it quietly and tucked it back where it had come from. It wasn't the kind of letter she needed to read. It was the kind I needed to write. I spent the afternoon in the garden, cut back the hydrangeas, thinned the herbs, fed the soil where the lavender was starting to fade. The world didn't care that I'd come back from a wedding that had almost forgotten me. But the ground did. It gave back what I gave it. That evening I made tea, pulled the last 2 cookies from the box, ate one, saved the other, wrapped it in wax paper, put it in the freezer, just in case. You see, I don't need a thank you. I don't need to be in the photos. But one day, Eleanor will look at her daughter, if she has one, and see the same eyes, the same stubbornness, the same quiet courage. And maybe then she'll remember. Maybe then she'll understand. And if you've read this far, if you've ever felt forgotten or unseen or quietly erased, Don't vanish. Don't ask for permission to matter. Cut the cake. Take your place. And if this story felt like yours, share it. Because someone else out there needs the reminder.